Welcome to Old Man Blerd. Hi, I'm John, and along with my friend Terrence, we make up a pair of lifelong geeks who happen to be black, over 50, but are certainly nerds first and foremost. The Alpha Geek and the Omega Freak. And we welcome everyone. And by everyone, we mean nerds, blerds, and bleaks, cosplayers and role players, geeks and freaks, Marvel zombies and distinguished competitors, Trekkies, Star Warriors, Batmaniacs, and Spider fans, Warhams, Whovians, AFOLs, adult fans of Legos, Tolkienites, Weeaboos, Supernatural Hunters and Otakus, Ava Geeks, Bro Stars and Sis Stars, Pokemon Trainers, Potterheads, Bronies, Whovians, Browncoats and Scoobies, and all nerd properties in between. Because we are over 50, we've seen a thing or two and have experience, long experience, with a lot of these properties. So thank you for listening to Old Man Blerd. Welcome to Old Man Blerd. Hi, I'm John, and along with my friend Terrence, we make up a pair of lifelong geeks who happen to be black, over 50, but are certainly nerds first and foremost. The Alpha Geek and the Omega Freak. And we welcome everyone. And by everyone, we mean nerds, blerds, and bleaks, cosplayers and role players, geeks and freaks, Marvel zombies and distinguished competitors, Trekkies, Star Warriors, Batmaniacs, and Spider fans, Warhams, Whovians, AFOLs, adult fans of Legos, Tolkienites, Weeaboos, Supernatural Hunters and Otakus, Ava Geeks, Bro Stars and Sis Stars, Pokemon Trainers, Potterheads, Bronies, Whovians, Browncoats and Scoobies, and all nerd properties in between. Because we are over 50, we've seen a thing or two and have experience, long experience, with a lot of these properties. So thank you for listening to Old Man Blerd.
Hello.
Hello. You're there.
Yeah, I'm here somewhere.
Yeah, it just popped on my screen. It was like, oh, Terrence is in the room. I was like, I will admit Terrence.
That's very nice of you.
I try.
Happy Mario Day.
Oh, it's Mario Day. Today is Mario Day. It wasn't like yesterday or anything. For some reason, I thought it was yesterday.
MAR10.
Ah, there you go. That's just like May 4th. May 4th be with you.
You got it. Yep. In a few days, it'll be my day.
Huh.
3/14.
Gotcha.
Our little geekisms.
Yes, we do like playing with words, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So, welcome everybody to Old Man Blerd, where 250 plus old black nerds reminisce, commiserate, complain, vent, and theorize about nerd culture and all of its byways and highways and how it affects the diaspora and other folks too. So,
He said.
and other folks too, you other nerd types. So what nerdy thing were you up to in the last week?
Strange it was. I actually didn't have anything until yesterday. I stumbled into my father watching About Things Wonka, and I actually loved it.
You watched, what was it?
Wonka.
Oh, was it good? It was
Yes,
good,
it
huh?
was good.
Huh.
It was good how they did it and everything. I mean, of course, there will always be some criticism in some way they could have improved.
Uh-huh.
It's one of the few times, they like. I must admit, I never saw the Return of Mary Poppins,
Okay.
but when they try to recapture, cinematic legend in that effect, they can't always do it.
This is true. You would be hard pressed to beat Gene Wilder. Excuse me, in my opinion.
You're right, but him portraying the idea of a young Wonka, it worked.
Okay. Did
Him
he have
saying,
some of the same sort of attitudes? Was he kind of
"Oh,
little?
he went out of his way to have the same sort of attitudes."
So he was kind of a little snarky, a little sarcastic, a little
Yes, yes,
temperamental.
yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, I did not see that. I did not. I have not seen that. That is not. I'll see it at some point. I know that. I'm sure I'll catch some of the Oscars at some point today. This is being recorded on March 10th for everyone that's listening. So the
Mario
Mario
Day.
Day, Mario Day. Um, I suppose what is it outside of just catching up on all of my reading? I ended up getting the new Spider-Punk comic book. I haven't read it yet. There's a part of me that's still at that place where it's like, do I read it or do I get a second copy and then slab this? Yeah, so the collector in me sort of sprouted when I got it. It's like a variant
Just,
cover, is why.
just okay. I was gonna say just get it and then get the little cheapy slab. Even the slab is $20 because you're basically paying for the slab. With you pay the same price for the slab. Is why I said it.
It's true. I am,
Mhm.
and I'm also very excited for the One Piece. The next OP06 is coming out. The sixth sort of set of cards. It's Wings of the Captain, and I've seen some of the artwork, and it's really great. But I think the big news, the big thing I did was had related to the news, which is that Akira Toriyama passed away, the creator of Dragon Ball Z, one of the greatest mangakas that probably ever put ink to page. He's not quite Disney, but pretty close when it comes to manga. And yeah, he passed away. It was like a cerebral hematoma, I think it was, or something. I don't know if there was an accident. He actually passed away on March 1st, but
Wow.
they didn't let anybody know until like the 7th, and they didn't want flowers, they didn't want any sort of stuff, which is, I understand because that could be kind of distracting.
Personal.
Yeah, and it's personal, but I mean the amount of influence he has is just huge. So and so I ended up watching some cooler fight scenes, Gohan versus Cell, uh and some other stuff, just to kind of go, yes, that's right. Because Dragon Ball Z, that was I think in Blerd culture it figures prominently. So
Mhm.
I should probably do, I guess this could be a memorial piece just for a bit. I definitely have other things that we can talk about, but I should probably do a reasonable in memoriam for him, because like I say, he was just so influential and so powerful a creator. Uh, you can't really talk about modern manga, without mentioning him, because I think it's one of the all-time greatest sellers. He really put Shonen Jump on his back, which then kept it viable for later creators like Naruto and One Piece and Demon Slayer and all of the rest of the shonen anime, where there's a hero who needs to have a quest, the hero's journey, a bit like Luke Skywalker, to get more and more powerful to defeat evil. And Son Goku was that was the hero's journey, and that was Toriyama, so pretty impactful. And I don't know why, but he really Dragon Ball really captured the attention of, I guess, the first sort of wave of like black anime fans. I mean, not the first, because I mean, we were sort of first. I mean,
Yeah,
people
we
watch
were.
people watching Go Lion and Transor Z or Manzinger and Gotcha Man, which was Battle of the Planets here, or Robotech, that kind of stuff. Early anime fans, even Ghost in the Shell and Akira, were early,
I
early.
was going to go further back.
Astro
I was gonna
Boy.
go further back. I was going to no Kimba.
Yes. Yep. That too. You know, Ranma half, and all of those sort of Dirty Pair. I mean, there was a lot of early stuff there, but I think that when Dragon Ball premiered, and I believe it premiered like in 1998 on Toonami, and kept going on through the early 2000s. It and Sailor Moon were like the 1-2 punch of shonen boys and manga or boys anime, and shojo, which is considered quote unquote girls anime, which was Sailor Moon. And so it just captivated audiences, and I think that by that time most everybody had cable. I think even if most apartments had a coaxial hookup, so you could just plug it in and get cable without having to pay a ton like you used to. And
Right.
so that enabled, Toonami and Funimation, all that helped really get the anime thing going, and Dragon Ball Z was sort of the king of that.
Right.
I did see, I don't know if you saw it, but I saw I guess it was a meme where Goku was dressed up as Superman and Superman was dressed up as Goku, and they were hugging. And there's been a real huge outpouring
That one I
of
was kind of thinking about. I actually didn't think of the specific one you said, but I was thinking, I wonder how, if anyone did anything with Superman, basically comforting Goku. That's really what I thought.
yeah, because he is in terms, he's probably, and I don't think this is an exaggeration, I think he is probably the equivalent of a manga Superman, in that he may not have been the first superhero, but the first superhero to really gain popular attention. And without Dragon Ball, you don't really get the big swell of anime fans and manga fans in the West. You just don't. That and Sailor Moon, you just don't get it. And I think that when I was looking at Black Twitter, because it was Black Twitter that I found out. I was, on Reddit, and there's a Reddit uh, sort of group called Black Twitter, where it's mostly jokes that Black people are making about other Black people or whatever. And they were talking about how he passed away, and that's how I found out on I guess it was on the 7th, because it was huge. Because and there's a lot of Black creatives and YouTubers that have been doing their condolences, because there was a post I saw. It's like Black people in the hood didn't want to be a cop or a fireman. They wanted to be Goku. And I think a whole lot of them practicing the Kamehameha in the bathroom, and hoping that at some point, some fireball or energy burst comes from your hands. So real huge. And I think that, yeah, just real huge. I think it's almost a bit like the Wu-Tang Clan, where, there has always been this interest, intrigue, uh, love for Black people and martial arts. It was
Right.
like Bruce Lee, and then getting super into Bruce Lee in the 70s. Everybody did, but I just remember, like, I was at that time I was living in Montbello, which was the hood, and man, everybody was just into Bruce Lee. Everybody. And when the Wu-Tang Clan came out, and they had all of these samples from Master Killer and 36 Chambers, Shaolin, and all that, there is this real love of martial arts, and it kind of influenced breakdancing too. Of course, there was some cross-pollination between sort of martial arts and breakdancing as far as a style, a look. And Dragon Ball, being essentially the hero's journey in a martial arts sense, was huge. It just was
Right.
very, very big.
I think it
Um,
also influenced the Boondocks martial arts scenes.
oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. I think I want to say Magruder, Aaron, the creator of Boondocks, which is great. I would absolutely, I would take bet money on it that he was influenced by that, because I think it was, you know, and you had Naruto and you had and Dragon Ball Z, both martial arts, and yeah, that just animated martial arts, that was huge. That was just huge. And so, yeah, there's been a real outpouring of condolences. Matter of fact, you know, you can go to some of the online magazines, black magazines. Vibe has a big write up. You know,
Wow.
yeah. So it is a thing. Dragon Ball Z for brothers is a thing. So,
Also probably influenced Afro Samurai.
oh, for sure, for sure. I think that um yeah, there's always been this this love of martial arts, some elements of sort of Eastern culture. It's like brothers have been some of the first weeaboos.
Hmm.
So yeah, I Thundercat, the bassist, who's a musician, he's great. He has he has a song called Dragon Ball Durag. And so he obviously offered some condolences too. A lot of people, a lot of hip hop folks. It, big deal, and a big loss. And only 68, which is crazy, especially when I
We look
68.
in the mirror.
Yeah,
We look-
that's well within sight. you know,
Yeah,
not. It's a little ways. It's a
for
little
you,
ways.
closer for me.
Yeah, closer for you than me. I turned 54 this year, so I've got a bit of a ways. But yeah, there is that is really an important, impactful thing. You don't get Demon Slayer, you don't get Naruto, you don't get One Piece, and Oda, and he's been, talking about how great a loss it was, and creator of One Piece. And you just don't get all of that stuff. I think that it is true. I think that Superman would be the closest analogy, because it's not like that Akira is like a Stan Lee particularly. He did do a great deal of creativity, but he's much more like a creator of Superman, which launched a bunch of other things in its wake.
Right.
So it's a bit different. And so yeah, it was really cool to see the Goku and Superman thing, because it was, yeah. And there's also remember reading a post that someone said that Koriyama Toriyama, I'm sorry, had created both the worst black characters and the best black characters, because you have Mr. Popo, and that is a problematic character.
He looks a lot of negativity. Thank you.
Yes, he looks very much like a sort of a Sambo type character. Uh, you know, but but at the same time, he has some of these characters like Piccolo and other characters, even Vegeta, I think, where it's like, oh, this is kind of sort of, there's an element of it that is sort of stereotypical black masculinity, and I think people really
Oh yeah. One of
get,
the best examples of a black father is Vegeta.
yeah, 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 yeah. And so I think that there's some truth to that. I think that, but I also think that it has a lot to do with, I mean, there's some father stuff there. There's definitely some dad or lack thereof in some of these anime, where it's like in Disney, the mom is always gone, right? And
It depends. If the mom is always gone, if it's animation, if it's live action, the dad is always dumb.
yes, whereas in anime, I remember, see, I've been watching anime back when they called it Japanimation.
Oh
But
God,
I know,
you
isn't
are
that,
old.
yeah, that's old. But there was an anime, it's like, it's always the dad. There's no dads in Pokemon because of the Great War. At
Right.
least that's the theory, is there's some kind of great war and all the dads are gone. And Naruto doesn't have a dad. Goku's a flake.
Fair. He is the fair. He is the ultimate affair. He's the fair.
Oh, you're breaking up there a little bit.
He is a fair. His ultimate affair.
Oop,
You know,
still lost you. I don't know what happened. I think you might be losing your connection. Oh, now I can hear you now.
Yeah, I said Goku has always had an affair. His
Sure.
training.
Yes.
his training is the ultimate affair. You know, oh, your
his,
kids are dying. No, training is more important.
his
Yep.
yes, his mistress is the training. But yeah, a lot of anime, it's like the lot of dads are just gone. Hunter x Hunter, dad's gone. One Piece, dad's gone. Most of the dads are gone. Usopp's dad's gone. Luffy's dad, he's around, Dragon, but he's gone. Ace's dad, gone.
So what you're saying is, in the anime world, we probably should avoid coming around.
Yeah, anime
Out of
dads.
self-preservation. Out of self-preservation. Oh, you're a father. Yeah, go over here, otherwise you might die. Oh, yeah. You know
Yeah,
what?
that's true.
Yeah, we have to be more like Eddie's father. You know Eddie from
Courtship of Eddie's father.
no, Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, yes.
You know, coming in about once every. I mean, the child is 11. Hi, how you doing? I know you're super independent and super smart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then,
I'm in for about an episode and a half, and I'll see you later.
yeah, right. He did go off with him. Spoilers. He did end up leaving with him. If you haven't seen all of Cowboy Bebop, first of all, shame on you. It's great, and you wouldn't have gotten Cowboy Bebop. You wouldn't have gotten Cowboy Bebop without some of that stuff. I mean, although in terms of time, I want to say
It's
Cowboy
about the same
Bebop.
time for
Yeah,
about the same period. I mean,
yeah,
it's like X-Men and Doom Patrol. It's real close.
yes, but I think without the people being open to, because Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z both skew a bit young. Cowboy Bebop skews a bit older, as does Samurai Champloo by the same creative team. But because it skews younger, it definitely could be something that little kids could watch and get super into and obsessed with. Because I think that, but I mean, I think that group of people that were able to be young and watching Toonami and checking that stuff out right when it came out and be young about it, I think what a great thing, because when I was young, Thundercats was all right.
Oh, let's see. Well, they had the threesome.
GI
They had
Joe,
Thundercats, Silverhawks, and Tiger Sharks.
sure,
I mean,
sure,
because you had space, water, and land, for lack of a better term.
sure.
You
And
know, and G.I. Joe is basically to themselves.
yeah, and GI Joe was fine, but I think that there were some great characters in GI Joe. I never got into Transformers. I was always much more into Tranzor Z, which is Manzinger Z, and Voltron, which was Go Lion. I
Okay,
was
now I'm going to show myself for a second here.
sure.
Is Manzor Z Radin or Mazinga?
Huh?
Okay, now I'm
Manzinger?
showing my age.
Yeah,
Mazinga.
oh,
See,
Mazinga.
Mazinga was Shogun Warriors toy, giant monster kaiju. His first attempt by Mattel
Uh-huh.
came out in the 70s, late.
Oh
early
yeah,
80s.
yeah. I had one of those big giant friggin' that
Yeah,
shot his fist. Man, I
yeah,
wish I just
that was
looked.
Mazinga. That
Yeah,
was Mazinga.
I just looked. Those are going for $200 on eBay.
Mm-hmm.
There you
And
go.
and if you notice, they do and don't. He's one of the, how should I say? I'm not sure how the licensing goes, but he's around and yet not.
Yes.
You know, you will see him always in some sort of background. You're like, okay, do you license him or don't you? Because why is he here? Because he's here.
Now, see, now my understanding, and I've confused, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Manzinger Z that it was also in Weekly Shonen Jump. And it was known as Transor Z in the United States. And so I used to watch Transor Z, but it was Manzinger Z, which is Manzinger, which is from the Shogun Warriors.
Ah, see,
Correct?
because when they did the commercial, they
Uh-huh.
call it Mazinga. So, maybe
Manzinga.
that was maybe that was a mispronunciation
Yeah,
on their part.
I think it is.
But
I just am looking on, not that we should always trust trust
he,
Wikipedia, but it
yeah.
seems as though, yeah, Manzinger Z and Manzinga and Transor Z, all the same.
Oh, cool, great. Because I thought it was losing it though for a second.
Yeah, I watched the heck out of that. I mean, that's the thing, is that early anime, a lot of it was mechs, and yeah, and just like a lot of stuff was kaiju, the first
Mhm.
things that kind of came over. But
Yeah,
so definitely out there, ladies and gentlemen, do a Kamehameha.
at
uh
least.
at least for for Akira, because that he deserves it. He absolutely deserves it, because he was great. And Toriyama
And
will be
he's
missed.
immortal. He's immortal. As long as Dragon Boy Z is around, they're going to think about him.
Yeah, that is probably, I think that's one of, there are certain pop culture properties that you can tell are going to certainly outlive you or I, and have outlived our parents and grandparents and everything else. And I think Dragon Ball Z might be that. Um, I think it might. I think that One Piece has a really good shot. I think, uh,
Well, it
depending on
depends
how
on
he
what
sticks
you're
the
trying to do.
landing.
Right. Because well, it's not so much that, it's also the intention. Like, best example, Superman, his symbol is the second most recognized symbol in the world behind the
Sure.
Christ
Uh
cross.
huh.
And then, so that's immortal in that sense. And
Hmm.
then Scooby Doo is the, how should I say, the introduction into horror and supernatural as far as kids under the age of 5 go.
Sure.
So again, he's immortal in that sense. Because every kid, they'll say, well, I don't like Scooby Doo, but you like horror. Yeah, so you watch Scooby Doo. Well, yeah, but I don't like it anymore. How
Sure.
do you think you got into it without being screamed or scared or
Sure.
crying?
Sure. And Dragon Ball Z would definitely be that for manga and for anime.
Exactly.
In the
Uh,
West, anyway. In the West.
well, yeah. Well, yeah. It's the same thing. Kaiju, we always think of Godzilla.
Yeah. These are intellectual properties that will certainly, as long as we don't completely obliterate this planet and are just, it's road warrior for the next few centuries, should outlive us all. And
Well,
rightfully so.
and if they do certain things, they'll still see it. You'll see the Church of Godzilla. Just go,
Yeah,
wow, what the heck is this?
that would be funny. The Church of Godzilla.
Or
So,
Superman or Vegeta.
yeah.
Seriously,
Oh, did
a
you
man
ever
collector has in their house.
did
Their house, and there's a disaster, and they go to the house. 200 years later, and you
have
see
you?
this is the Church of Vegeta. What?
Yeah, right. I think that what's interesting, this reminded me that I think that at one point, uh, Alan Moore came up with the House of Ka-El kind of as a story. That I
Mhm.
think it was a treatment that he had come up with that kind of eventually, I think, became the House of M for another writer, whoever did
Okay.
the House of M in Marvel. But it was just like, there it's sort of, if I recall correctly, it was like an Alan Moore sort of idea that was a combination of like the House of M in Marvel and Old Man Logan in Marvel, if I recall correctly. But yeah, there might be, yeah, the House of Ka-El, just a bunch of people that just sort of worship Superman. I think we could do a lot worse than worshiping Superman or Dragon Ball Z. I think there's any number of religious traditions that seem to be a little bit more intolerant and violent than those two. So at least
Yeah,
these
one is telling to
are
improve yourself. One is to try to save as much as you can.
sure,
Super wise.
self-sacrifice. All of these characters are very New Testament, very much self-sacrifice, selfless behavior. But yeah, Akira Toriyama, great. Sending him all of the energy I can to. I hope that wherever he is as magical as the worlds he created. So that was
Agreed.
that. But anywho, so there's that. We did have a couple of subjects, and that I think this could kind of lead into. We had one idea of a thing that we wanted to talk about, which was how innocence can be destroyed by sort of this lack of a suspension in belief and sort of a cynicism. The thing that both Dragon Ball Z and Superman have is a real profound optimism, there and overcoming obstacles for your fellow human beings or Saiyans.
Right.
Yeah, but the idea and that very simple notion, which has a certain level of innocence to it, is there's a lack of us. We have a lack of the ability to suspend our disbelief. Are we more cynical now? Are we more hardened? The
No, I don't think it's any of that. I think what it is that it's all a matter of percentages.
Okay,
It's
explain.
like serial killers. Serial killers, the number percentage wise has never changed. It's just by our populations to become more. So
Sure.
it's the same as someone who feels jaded. I don't believe in Santa Claus. I don't give a F about that. That little stuff.
Uh-huh.
All of that is the percentage has grown more in number as far as population, but not in percentage. And they become more vocal. Well, I don't like that. Because when we were kids, you didn't like it. You don't like it. You might tell 2 or 3 friends and that be the end of it. Or you might not watch that movie or that's not your favorite one. Now we have the internet. Now we have people who, if you don't like it, they got to make a big deal, almost get brutal about it,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just respect your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And and as I was telling you in our conversation earlier, that's a big divider now is opinion.
Sure. So do you think social media has amplified that?
I think it has given them the key to the kingdom.
Hmm.
It's given them the ability to do it where they wouldn't, as in the anonymously of being behind the keyboard.
Sure.
You know,
And so
and
go on.
they can just say whatever. I'm saying they can just say whatever and carry on and carry on.
Hmm.
That's just the best way to put it. That
Well,
really is.
I do think that there is some of our lack of the ability to suspend our disbelief has to do with a bit more knowledge. The average kid in the 1950s probably didn't really have a good grasp of, oh, I don't know, radioactivity. They might
No,
not
what you say is true.
they might not have had a real good grasp of genetics. So even though in many respects we as a society in some ways are less intelligent, we're still our lowest level of intelligence. People still know generally more passively than a kid in the 1950s. So you tell a kid in the 1950s, oh, Flash has his costume in the ring, and they just be like, yeah, sure. A kid now would be like, how does that actually happen, or how does that actually work? And so the ability to just go and tell a story might be hampered by the fact that there's a whole lot of splaining to do. Because
No, what you say is very true. That's the aspect. I mean, it's like before Jacques Cousteau, Aquaman was useless, and the submariner was useless, and then
Oop.
the Martians improved it. It's like,
Oh, you sounded terrible
yeah.
there. I didn't hear any of that.
I said if it wasn't for Jacques Cousteau,
Uh-huh.
Aquaman and the Submariner sounded terrible as far as their
Sure.
abilities until he showed the science of the pressure they were at. But see, that's the problem that people don't understand. It's not so much that science is supposed to make us stop belief; it's supposed to explain the essence of what you're trying to convey. Like, okay, why is it Aquaman can take on Superman? Why is it the Submariner can actually take on the Hulk? There
Sure.
you go. You know, instead of going, well, that's not real. We already know it's not real. What do you think? We already know it's not real. We didn't say it's not possible. But the best example is, and this is the best example. Tomorrow morning, somehow, some way, you go back in time 500,000 years. You see a little girl drowning. She's
Uh-huh.
4.
Uh-huh.
You go over and give her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. What are they going to say you did?
I don't know. I give up. What do you
You
just
brought her back from the dead.
Oh, I see.
You see? So it's the same thing. Magic is not so much magic, or science is not so much, it's how. All of it's how.
Sure.
And that's the best way to put it. I mean, that's the one thing about science fiction. They have a movie called Outlander years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, they explain dragons as just an alien race from another planet, but just the concept of just how, you understand?
Sure.
It doesn't mean that it could have been an actual dragon. They were like, it was like similar to a sea underwater creature, that has a glowing orb, like I forgot what that fish is, but the one that they always love to put with a little light on top of his head.
Sure. Sure. Deep
Yes,
sea. I forgot what
yes.
the animal is called, but yeah. I know what
Yeah,
you're talking
because
about.
it's most disturbing when they show the picture and then you see the actual creature is almost 6 feet long. You're like, dear God. But it's neither here nor there. Uh, the dragon, I'm saying, is the same premise. It's like, okay, you say a dragon.
Sure.
Where magic really comes in is where there is not a scientific equivalent of explanation.
Sure. And I think that one of the things I was trying to explain to a coworker is that there are things that we don't understand, and science needs to get better at just saying, yeah, we don't understand that, rather than discounting sort of what maybe other groups that have more of a, for lack of a better word, maybe a spiritual or religious interpretation of the reality. Like, in other words, a spiritual paradigm might say, "Ooh, ghosts," but maybe in the future we'll go, "Oh, well, there's this fourth dimensional plane that somehow reverberates with ours and imprints past tragic events and stores them in some weird way and plays them over again or something." Like, we just
Yeah,
don't
and
have
Echo.
yeah, we just don't have the science to describe it. And what has happened uh both with religious traditions and with science is that they just automatically discount the other, you know.
Exactly. And see, that's one of the advantages. I've always said this. I've said this not forever, be a lie.
Hmm.
But since I was in my 20s, when they, role playing games had their first, how should I say, Zenith, their second Zenith was doing COVID.
Sure.
And if you saw a lot of role playing games, the best example was Continuum.
Hmm.
And it was a time travel game.
Hmm.
But the thought and the depth into it took a scientific thinking, even was their physics based on the reality of their game.
Hmm.
And so when people look at that, they don't understand that gaming might sometimes actually contain our real scientists.
Sure.
It
Well,
may
and
not explain the way we would want it, you understand?
sure.
But nonetheless, it might contain it.
Well, and I think the thing that people forget, a couple of things that people forget, but a couple that I'll mention at the very least. First of all, comic books and video games most often are science fiction. I mean, comic books actually, a lot of people don't realize, oh, what, comic books are science fiction? Yes, they're actually science fiction. Unless you're doing Conan and stuff like that, and that's sword and sorcery and that's fantasy, but in general, they tend to be actually science fiction. And the interesting second point is that science fiction has had an uncanny way of predicting different political movements, social movements, technologies. I mean, Jules Verne came up with the submarine way before the submarine. So
Exactly.
so it does tend to play with some of these ideas. And so that's where I get back to maybe the lack of the suspension of disbelief is a little bit of cynicism, a little bit of yeah, just a bit jaded. And also coming from a place of having some more knowledge. Turns out, yeah, Captain America could have been cryogenically frozen and in suspended animation. And then you throw in the super soldier serum, yeah, why not? But a kid wasn't asking that question in 1964 or whatever that first the Avengers issue 4 came out. Do you know what I mean? They just were like, "Oh, yeah, he froze for a while and now he's back."
No, what you say is absolutely correct. And it's the same thing about how each time, as you said, they find a way to do it. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, they recently found a way to use light to turn something, hence, like the Green Lantern's ring.
Sure.
Now, this was not a ring size item. It probably was about the size of a semi, but nonetheless, they found a way to get a light to turn an object.
Yeah, well, I think that, at a certain point we're going to come up with replicators. At a certain point we're going to come up with the knowledge that yeah, maybe we can manipulate light in creating solid objects. It will absolutely change economics because I think right now we're operating under sort of a notion that there's scarce resources. You have replicators or something like that, there's just not, that becomes illusory. It's just like, oh no, why couldn't everybody have a steak for dinner or
Well,
lobster?
yeah, no, what you say is absolutely correct. And one of the things that gets me is I forgot the name of the author's name, but he had different grades of planets as
Hmm.
far as society.
Hmm.
We're not even a one. We're like 0.73. And I'm like, are you kidding me? We're not
Like
even a one.
what do you mean, like grades of planets? Like in terms of
Well,
their
we could
level
say
of
a level
advancement?
seven. Level seven was a Dyson spear. Let's
Oh,
say
I
a level
see.
seven was or supreme time travel or dimensional manipulation.
Sure.
We're not even a level one.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that we can make it to level 2. Uh,
I like to at least see level one before I go.
yes, it would be nice. But I think that it's sad because I mean, and people will call me probably a socialist for this, but I kind of think that if we can just get to the point where if you're born, we're going to take care of you in terms of education. We're going to take care of you as far as food and shelter and everything else. What can you contribute to making humanity better? Because I think that's the impetus during, in Star Trek, right? Is that you're basically, um, the goal
You're
is to make humanity better,
a
right?
meritocracy, a meritocracy.
Yeah, a true meritocracy, not a meritocracy where it's like, well, we're going to give all the resources to a handful of groups, and then we're going to say, all of the groups, you're equal because whoever does well, it's by merit. It's like, no, you have to have everybody be able to have a level playing field. If all schools were equally funded, all had really professional people, and as far as teachers, everybody was at the basics, just being able to read and do math and all of these things, then yeah, we wouldn't have the brain drain that we have right now, where it's just like, oh, we're just going to lock success into mostly middle class and upper middle class groups, and lock it even further with those groups that have the most disposable resources to put into their children. Um,
Well, see, also the one of the problems we have is culture. As far as each culture, and I'm talking about worldwide, they have a different view of, as we will call fantasy, what leads into reality.
mhm,
Because some cultures, nobody can be better than anybody. Some cultures, that's literally nobody can be better than anybody. I don't know what happened in war or insecurity, but in other words, there's superheroes, there's science fiction, there's fantasy. There is no Superman because nobody can be better.
hmm,
They'll go some other way to have the same effect, but that changes the story dramatically,
sure.
or even the intention of the story. Because
Well,
they're trying to make its effect, and everything can't be kumbaya, but everything can't be, Deadpool on steroids trying to wipe out the Marvel universe.
sure. Well, and I think that's the thing is that, and now that we're sort of both at this place where we're starting to be accepting of other cultures, other ethnic paradigms, other religious paradigms, and other different, just other different ways of viewing reality. We're getting different stories. I mean, and you're starting to see that explored, particularly, I think, in DC. In some respects, we haven't explored it, I don't think, as much in Marvel. But you have, oh, what happens if Superman's spaceship crash lands in Russia? You get Red Sun, and what kind of story would that be? And so, there are different, depending on where a superhero takes place or a situation takes place, depends on what that superhero will be like. And so, it would be colored by the group or the ethnicity or the race or the country that it takes place in. And there are some countries and some cultures that are more cooperative. There are some that are more competitive. There are some that are adversarial to strangers and out groups, and all of that is in service of a story, can really create some interesting storylines. I think the problem, however, is that oftentimes people don't want to hear stories that they're unfamiliar with. When I think that it's finding out these different stories, it makes humanity that much more interesting. And
Oh yeah,
what?
because some people just shut things down. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to, and that's where too much knowledge comes in. Because then
Mhm.
you're picking and choosing your truth. And we say, well, you can have your personal truth. Your personal truth can be, I'm going to wear green all the time.
Sure,
It can't be that I don't eat,
sure,
or I don't feed my dog because it's got to learn to live off of the fumes of the world. No, no,
sure.
no. That's not your personal truth. That's a decision or a thought, I guess you could say. But
Well, and
that's
I
not a truth.
think the thing that I've been dealing with this a little bit with some friends and family, um, because it's an election year, and it's two incumbent presidents, which is never happened before. An ex-president running against the current president, and people aren't super happy about the choices. But I think what it has created is a certain misanthropy. And I've been seeing so many of my friends and family just sort of give in to this sort of negative view of humanity. And, if anything, being a fan of some of these stories, these science fiction stories, whether they be science fiction like Star Trek and Star Wars, or science fiction that's in the sort of comic book world, there still tends to be not so much misanthropy. And for those that don't know, misanthropy is sort of a loathing and distrust of humanity, and it's a profound negative view of human beings, you know. And so I've been seeing it rear its ugly head, and reasonable and ugly head, because of politics. And the thing about innocence and Superman and Goku is, yeah, things suck. They're not saying things don't suck, but they work their ass off to make them better. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the sad things I have about how maligned Superman has become in the last 30, 40 years, because that just simple doing good notion has been mocked now. And
Oh, and it has been criticized and ridiculed, and people having, they be talking about him wearing his underwear outside his pants, and then making fun about the very action you just said,
sure,
in correlation. And
but
what people don't understand is that we read these things. I never can say the best explanation I ever heard about comic books was, of all things, but from a semi horror TV show years ago. Anyway, it was Friday the 13th. One episode was about a cursed comic. To the point,
mhm,
the character was saying, because they're like, why are you starting the comics? He said, because when you're a kid, the world is really big. You need to know there's something bigger.
mhm.
You need to know that something can protect you, even if it's fake. Because when you're a kid, mom and dad's not always there. Your brother and sister's not always there. And if you're an only child, you really are screwed.
Well, and I
But
think,
I'm
yeah,
just saying that's what a superhero did for a kid.
Well, and I think that people mistakenly on the outside look at these things like, oh, this is male fantasy wish fulfillment. And to a degree that there's some truth to that. And but
Oh
I
yeah,
think
some of the
but
costumes. Oh my god.
but I think the larger issue is the desire for something good to happen. Like out of a
Yes.
crappy circumstance, something good happens. And I think people really dismiss the tragedy of Superman in some respects because Superman, he's like mostly the last person from his planet. He is an orphan and he is, fostered by this very, sort of down to earth kind of Kansas family with, arguably, typically, they would be considered quote unquote traditional family values, except they know he's an alien and they ensure and ask him to always do good for other human beings, even though he's not even human. And that level of self-sacrifice is really important. And it's kind of lost on us because now if you say, oh, I just want to help people, people are like, what's your angle? Everybody's looking to screw over everybody else. It's like you have all these grifters, you have all these people that are like, what can I say, no matter how crappy it is, that will get me the likes, that will get me the things that I want materially. It's like a materialistic nihilism. It's like we don't believe in
Oh, it
anything.
is.
We don't believe in anything but money. And
No,
so,
what you say is absolutely true because it's like I was telling my kids, how can I help you, help me, help you, help me? And they will say it 100 times, 1,000 times, 1 trillion times, but the answer will always be help me as the last result.
sure. And that's fine. I think that when you have children, that's your first real indication of doing something for someone other than yourself. And some people can get to that place without children, or have gotten to that place without children. But a lot of people, that's their real, you know, their real lesson in true selflessness. But there's an innocence, of course, with that simplistic thinking, but it is, at the end of the day, kind of all you have is just how well you are can be as a human being, how kind you can be, how understanding, how sympathetic you can be. I had started a comic book reading group for, I guess it was probably like 4 years at my daughter's elementary school, and we used sort of the Superman logo, but it was for a comic book club, and we had the comic book club logo inside the Superman diamond. And hero stood for honest, empathetic, respectful, and optimistic. That was what we were trying to be as heroes. And that simplistic sort of innocence of belief, uh, I think that we're not able to completely get there now. And so the heroes we get are Deadpool, who's great, but isn't necessarily doing the good thing. He's a mercenary, he's the merc with the mouth, so, you know, um it would be nice if some of these really bedrock sort of foundational beliefs of just don't be a dick, don't be a jerk.
You're
That's
right.
it's like people are going to make mistakes. Maybe they're not going to call you by your preferred name or your preferred pronoun, or they might not necessarily know what to say to you, but they want to do right by you. And I guess there's just a part of me that's trying to keep the misanthropy at bay and have hold to these sort of hero ideals, and keep that level of innocence and that storyline of, oh no, I can be of service in some way to humanity in a good way.
Well,
And
what you say is a good and a great goal and what we should strive for. The problem is, like I said, it's the percentage. You have that group who, their father or mother wasn't around, who
sure,
got bullied or got mistreated or whatever the reason, and now they want the world to burn,
sure,
and no one has done anything to them. And
sure,
we need to get to the point that we give them choice. You can
sure,
come along with the right. and do the best you can, and we'll help you, or you can be left behind. It's
Well,
simple as that.
and the question, I think, and this is, I think, where everybody is sort of biting their nails, particularly with this election and in the future in general, is we're getting closer and closer to a point where it is kind of evolve or die. Either we're going to have to put away some of the xenophobia, some of the racism, the sexism, the homophobia. We're going to have to put that stuff away and actually try to do right by our fellow human beings. But everybody it's like the law of resonance. It's like I saw the law of resonance so much just in like the One Piece card collecting. It's like there's only, stores only have a certain amount of cards. They only have a certain amount of Pokemon cards, a certain amount of One Piece cards. And I have been this person that's like, well, I'm just going to take a few so that someone else can get some. I'm apparently fairly alone in that sentiment, because there are people that are just like, no, I'm going to buy all of them, and then I'm going to
Well,
flip them, and then I'm going to sell some of them for more. And it's like, but how you can kill a game that way because of your selfishness. It's like at a certain point, you can gather all the gold on the Titanic, it's still sinking,
well,
you
what you
know?
say is absolutely true. That's one of the downfalls of our world, is that we have been invaded by a lot of the mainstreamers who, well, that has a value, that has a value. And other than that, they don't know jack about it because that's not the concern. Their concern is the money
Sure.
in improving their life. Their concern is not the passion, you know, because we know some stuff is made up, like, Sailor Moon, the creator, the
Mhm.
story, the legend is that she made the characters because she was lonely.
Mhm.
I've heard that's true, and I've heard that's a myth. I don't
Mhm.
know, don't care. I know that she's comfortable now and she's happy now. That's what I care about.
Mhm.
But the people who come into our world, you know, I mean, the best example is you spread the wealth. That's been overused in our world. I mean, we could say Star Wars was the beginning of it, you know, because
Mhm.
Star Trek kind of, but definitely Star Wars was the beginning of it.
Mhm.
Superman again during his time period, but
Mhm.
definitely Star Wars. What I mean is, you know, they would first they had like 5 ripoffs of Star
Mhm.
Wars, just toys and movies,
Sure.
you know, and they had nothing to do. They were just blatant ripoffs. And some are amusing. Battle of the Planets.
Sure.
And then some you like, what are you doing? And I'm not going to go into that, but I understand that sometimes it is a different take. You're trying to do something, you know. In some cases you go, okay, you're just doing your own perversion. Like I saw an alien ripoff, and that's basically what, okay, yeah, you gotta you're sick. But but my point is this is that's the beauty of our world that the mainstreamers don't appreciate. Sci-fi allows you empathy because of different cultures of the worlds.
Sure.
Sci-fi allows you to expand your imagination because you have to suspend your belief when the villain might be a mouse and your
Mhm.
best friend might be a talking dog.
Sure.
You know, sometimes or your biggest threat might be a supersized 65 story tall dinosaur.
Or like Captain Marvel, it turns out to be a worm.
Exactly. So
Mr.
so
Mind.
exactly. So and I mean, and this is the power of geekdom that so many of the mainstreamers don't appreciate, because
Well,
they'll run around and you have the guy, well, I can do my version of Superman or my version of Batman or whatever, and they whip it up and it's okay.
sure.
But
Well,
the
I
heart's not there. That's the problem. The heart's not there.
Well, and I think part of it is that these are archetypes we're dealing with. I mean, there's the trickster archetype. So you have your Spider-Mans, your Creepers, your Deadpools. You have, the hero who, suffers a great loss and then has to overcome it. Your Luke Skywalkers, your Spider-Mans, all of these things. So, I do think that when you're looking at these sort of broad, grand archetypes that comic books deal with, that science fiction deals with, that fantasy deals with, at the end of the day, they even though the set and the setting takes place in different places, it still tends to be doing right by your fellow human beings, being self-sacrificing and pushing yourself to be your very best. And I think when you talk about mainstream culture penetrating geek culture, I think they see the big guns and they see the big explosions and they see the fight scenes, but they're not necessarily as engaged with the why. You know, like the best scene in, arguably one of the best scenes in any Spider-Man movie was the scene where Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is trying to stop the subway from going over the edge, and he's just, you know, frantically, you know, shooting webs on both sides and using his own body as the sort of cushion to prevent the thing from going over the edge. And it actually chokes me up even thinking about it, because then he saves them and they sort of carry his body to the back. Do you remember that scene?
Yes, yes.
And they
And they
carry
realized that he was young.
they give him his mask back. They don't say anything. They're just appreciative. And to
Right.
me, it's those kinds of things that are the distillation of this entire sort of media of geekdom. That's what. Now, so, sure, you know, in Dungeons and Dragons, you can play an evil wizard and just become a demi-lich. That's part of, you know, playing with identity and role. But in general, you know, part of it is just, you know, looking at some of these issues, looking at some of these things that, what do we owe our fellow human beings? And, you know, I'm really having to counteract a lot of people that I know, their misanthropy and their bleakness with thinking, yeah, humanity's done, you know, that because, you
Well, part of it is also the mainstreamers are coming into our world other ways, like the clutterers, like as in, you know, someone throws away your stuff and they have no business doing. And I'm not talking just myself or anyone we know. I'm talking about in general in the culture, you
sure,
know. And then
disposable. Yeah, it becomes
yeah, the
disposable.
exposable without thinking about, you know, I hate to say this because there's not a good way to say it. It's going to get me a lot of trouble. But you can't talk about the shooters when sometimes one of those shooters might be one of us as a geek and you went and did something to their stuff, or they were, forget about their stuff, they were harmed in their school because they like Pokemon
Sure, they
and
might
they're
have been
17.
bullied. Sure, they might have
You
been
know,
bullied. Yeah, and
exa-
I think what, you know, I do think that we have, as human beings, a real difficult time holding two seemingly paradoxical things in our head at the same time. Like, you know, you can have absolute, positively deep, deep sympathy for victims of a situation. But you can also hold in your head, it's not a paradox, you can hold in your head some sympathy for the crazy place that a person got to do that act. There's a Thich Nhat Hanh poem. I think it's called Please Call Me by My True Names. And he basically goes and he does that very thing. He says, I am the girl that has been raped and is afraid for her life. I am the rapist who's feeling pain and anger and am lost in my own mind. So he goes back and forth. He constantly is comparing himself from the predator to the prey, or the victim to the perpetrator, because
right.
we're all in this together. And as much as I can say certain people, yeah, they're huge jerks. Uh, you know, it takes a lot to become a jerk too. You know, sometimes it's just some abuse, some innocence that has been violated, and some pain. And so, you know, I'm lucky that the pain that I experienced in my life, rather than wanting to inflict that on others, I wanted to do a Batman. I wanted to make sure no one experienced that pain.
Exactly. Because that's like I
And
told you before.
and
No,
that's
that's
the
Superman's
difference.
greatest power. You
Yeah,
know,
and that's
Superman's
the
greatest power
Batman's
is holding
that's
back.
yeah, and that's the Batman's greatest power, is that at the end of the day, he doesn't want anyone to go through what he did as a kid.
Exactly.
Now, I don't know if breaking the jaws of shoplifters is part of that, is part of that, but but still,
Goals,
that's
man, goals.
yeah,
The end game is
it's
more important.
small choices. Yeah, for sure. But I think that's just about our time for this subject. Yeah, just the looking at the innocence that has been destroyed by some, and the lack of suspension of disbelief, and how it impacts media, and particularly these sort of geeky properties of sci-fi, fantasy, and comics, and anime, and everything else.
Yeah.
I think one thing I will say, one last little point. One thing I will say about anime, this includes, of course, Dragon Ball and all of the things that have been influenced by Dragon Ball Z, is that it still harkens back, even modern anime still harkens back to that self-sacrifice. Demon Slayer is huge right now, and it would not have even come into being without Akira Toriyama. Excuse me, lost my words there. I need some water. But it would not have existed without Akira Toriyama, and it is all about saving humans from the demonic hordes that just want to eat them. And they're kids constantly sacrificing themselves and sometimes losing. And
Right.
so that strain is still there. It sometimes maybe it's not the message, but the way the message is conveyed. So maybe people aren't necessarily watching or listening to or reading Superman, but they're definitely getting that vibe. And he really, just like Dragon Ball Z, really needs to be respected for bringing and popularizing anime and manga here in the West. Superman has to be sort of praised for that heroic impulse in comic book form, and comic books definitely did influence manga. So
Agreed.
anyway, well, I guess people can find you at drakestorm@gmail.com. They can find me at drupgu108@gmail.com, or thatsoquantum@gmail.com. Please hit the like and the subscribe. Please send us comments or questions or concerns. They're trickling in a little bit here and there. At this moment, we're absolutely doing this just for the love of each other, as well as the love of the things we're talking about. But we'd love to hear from you and hear some likes and some subscriptions for all the folks that are out there that are into these things that we are. So anything else that you have that you want to wrap up with, Terrence?
No, that's good.
We're feeling pretty complete. So
Yeah, we
like we like to say around here, don't be a stranger.
Just be strange.
And we will see you probably in a week or two. Probably maybe a week. But definitely hit the like and subscribe, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.